Hello, and a warm welcome to the Irish Angle, our weekly chat about everything horse racing. I've Emma Nagle and Johnny Ward is back, so we're all back here for this week. Johnny, Emma, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vinny.
Thanks, Vincent.
Now, one first thing I just want to mention is if you do like watching our shows, will you please hit the little like button below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So then you'll get notifications about all the other good shows we have coming up. Emma's going to do a runner by runner guide to the Grand National, I think, later this week. And we'll also have a preview of all the Aintree action as well. So don't miss out on them. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. Now, anyway, we'll kick on. First thing is the IHRB. They released findings on a critical incident review they held over the Thurles incident on the 6th of February when poor Michael O'Sullivan passed away. And so they had a whole review of this, and some good news came out of it in the sense that they found there was no case of human error, no equipment failure, or environmental factors as the primary cause. And also, I thought was one thing was really worth mentioning is the fact that when the incident happened, there were first responders on the scene within 14 seconds. That's all good news, Emma, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I suppose comforting to hear how quickly the first responders can react to jockey's incident on the track, and yeah, I suppose all good news and good to see that there was no negative findings coming from that. I suppose I was pointing yesterday in Liscarroll, and it was great to see Michael's brother Alan having another double at the weekend. He's absolutely flying this year. The points, a real talent for anyone to look out for.
Yeah, he's unstoppable. He did treble only a couple of weekends ago, didn't he, as well? Amazing stuff. Johnny, just on this, there were 4 recommendations made by the IHRB after the review, and they say that they're going to implement all the recommendations. The first one is on staff training. They're saying that they need to do scenario-based drills for multi-horse incidents, which is fair enough. I suppose you'd have to prepare yourself for that. Another one is a track review and maintenance, where they're going to look at track configuration and a watering system for Thurles for ground consistency. That was one of the things that Thurles doesn't, or up to now, hasn't had a watering system, one of the few tracks. And then they're talking about monitoring, develop real-time data tracking of faller rates at all the tracks. And then for veterinary practices, standardized sedation safety procedures, mandatory post-mortem examinations after equine fatalities, and use of tech to assess horse suitability to race. Now, there's a lot of things in there, but just the one that struck me was personally was around the watering system, and they were saying for the reason for it is for ground consistency, which would make you think that there's often inconsistencies in the ground on a track. And as we see on the day that accident happened in Thurles, the official going was good. Just one word used for it, but you presume there were different levels of good at different parts of the track, and not every piece of ground was exactly the same. So I'm suggesting that they should maybe start looking at the going stick as an idea to get some proper data on all of this. What do you make of it, Johnny?
Yeah, racing is still way behind in terms of data usage and all of that to basically give you an idea of what happened in a race, what the ground is like. I mean, you should be able to give a ground description entirely based on the figures of a day in terms of what the wind was that day, what way the wind was blowing, and then the sectionals of all the horses, the times that they're doing. You should be able to throw that into basically your proverbial floppy disk, and it'll tell you exactly what the ground is, because the overall ground. So the review of the incident. I mean, I've spoken to a couple of jockeys on this, and it was just one of these. First of all, nothing will bring Michael back, and that's the whole point. Like, there's all of these reviews just bring back the reality of the situation that he's passed away. But I spoke to some of the jockeys who were riding that day, and it was a very unfortunate incident. But having said that, watering has taken place at Thurles since, and I understand jockeys were insistent it had to take place for them to return to the track there. Thurles hadn't been watering, and very unfortunate for Thurles. I mean, you should not have to water this time of year, and Thurles as a track has been well known for how well it drains and all of that. But I mean, the report obviously didn't describe any human error, and at this stage, nothing's going to bring Michael back. But obviously, there are still question marks over the ground on the day, I suppose, and the fact that there has been watering going on since, if that makes sense. But it was a difficult situation for everyone involved. You shouldn't have to be watering at this time of year. It is what it is. But I'm not sure what to make of the overall report, because I think you don't really want to be blaming people. in a situation as tragic as this. But I suppose that there were some positives come out of it in terms of the response time. I felt that was excellent, and that could be the difference in life and death. Unfortunately, it wasn't here. And obviously, the more you look into it, Michael was very, very unlucky with the way what happened around him in the incident, but also we had low grade horses going very fast for their quality.
Yeah, there's all those things to take into account. Anyway, we'll move on. Another thing we see, the Irish Field had an article the weekend, trainers and owners in particularly giving out about prize money and more specifically about the contribution Horse Racing Ireland is making to the prize money, because their contribution is slightly down on what it was, and the owners' share of the prize money is going up, the amount they're contributing to it. What do you make of this, Johnny, just as an overall?
Prize money is bad in Ireland, possibly very bad, and it's gone from a situation where we were lauding it, and it has been still lauded in recent times, where prize money is not good in Ireland. There's no way of dressing this up. If you compare it to Britain, it's even looking worse with every year. And the Irish Field article made reference to some of the races where the HRI has tried to protect the bottom level prize money, which I suppose the likes of Ger Lyons would probably be of the, very much like survival of the fittest. But at the graded level and sort of the listed levels, prize money is really, really poor. You look at the likes of the Cork National, how much that has gone back. All the while, the cost of training a horse and the cost of everything, the cost of your coffee, the cost of your energy, everything has gone way, way up in these years. So owning a horse in Ireland now it was never, it was what rich people did, I suppose, to throw a few bob into a hobby, but it really doesn't make any economic sense whatsoever. The problem that the HRI will say, well, okay, and Suzanne Eade argued the case in the article. The problem that HRI has is that price turnover on horse racing is down about 20% in the last 2 years. It's a massive, massive drop because of affordability checks, other matters. And in my view, bookmakers not really caring about racing anymore relative to where it was at. Whereas like Flutter now will be all about the Super Bowl and the American market. They probably don't give a shit about Thurles, to be honest, and races like that. They just don't care as much anymore because it's much less than it was. So the turnover is down. It's going to have a big effect on the money going into the race courses. So that problem hasn't gone away, and I'm not sure where the prize money situation improves, because we're already, give or take, 50% of our prize money is basically a government donation, and you can dress that up any way you want. But if you took the government donation out of prize money in this country, which would basically be what they have in Britain, we would like have almost an industry collapse overnight. So we're in a precarious situation. Prize money is very, very poor. It's gone backwards while the cost of owning a horse has gone way up.
I agree. Yeah. But the problem is, how do you solve the problem? That is the issue, isn't it? So you've owners and trainers or whatever saying that they think the government needs to stump up more, or Horse Racing Ireland needs to push more of the money that the government gives them directly into prize money. But Horse Racing Ireland is spending that money in lots of different ways, including on integrity services, which they've spent 3 million more on in the last 4 years than they were previously. I think it's gone from 12 million to 15 million. They give the IHRB for doing all their testing and everything else. We talk about this critical incident review and everything else. That they all cost money, so that there needs to be a large amount of money spent on that, obviously. But the other thing for me here is that overall, you've got an industry which Horse Racing Ireland tells us, and all the government love beating the same drum, is that it's worth 2.5 billion to the economy each year and supports 30,000 jobs. Yet it can't stump up its own prize money. It needs the taxpayer. It needs me to give it to, and you and Emma. The three of us have to pay money to this, like on top of what the owners are putting in and what everyone else. There must be another way here. There must be a way that this. I think personally this should have been tiered out over a period, or phased out over a period of years, because it's hard to see why the taxpayer still has to pay if this is such a big business industry. And we know there are lots of very wealthy people out of horse racing. You'd know a few of them, Emma, wouldn't you?
I wouldn't be one of them now, but I probably know the names of a few, right? Yeah, you'd imagine like the whole system probably just needs an overhaul, doesn't it? Like the points you're making, like we're definitely the only racing jurisdiction in the world reliant on government handouts, and our prize money, as Johnny kind of said, is probably as bad as it's ever been. I suppose for years we were kind of applauded, like Johnny said, for how good our prize money was, but as the years went on, it's got worse and worse. And I suppose jumps racing is a bit harder to quantify because it's not really worldwide. You're kind of comparing to the UK, whose prize money isn't great either. But just looking at the flat, like for example, like if you're an owner on the flat, like why would you keep your horses in Ireland? I suppose the prestige of the races is the only thing. If you have a horse good enough to win, one of those top races in Ireland, it's going to be more prestigious than other jurisdictions and go to the UK and stuff like that. But you'd have owners there winning maidens with horses, and they're getting offered massive sums of money for this horse to go racing in Hong Kong and other places like that. It's going to become more of a problem down the line, you'd imagine, because it's going to be very hard for owners to turn down sending their better horses, selling them off to other jurisdictions, which is eventually just going to dilute the quality of Irish racing. You'd have to imagine. It's worrying, and you'd imagine, like you said, racing should be able to support its own prize money structure. We can't be demanding more money off the government to help support increasing our prize money. There must be another way to improve it. And yeah, look, it's definitely worrying, because you'd have to ask, like, why would you have a horse in training in Ireland at the moment? Because you're not going to make money. You're more than likely going to lose money. You'd be very lucky to break even. So it's definitely a worry. As Johnny said, costs are going up, prize money is going down. It's like for an industry which is supposed to be thriving, like you said, Vincent, it's definitely very worrying for the future.
I just don't really see a solution either, Vinny. Like, if you compare it to the Arab states that are just throwing essentially oil money at their prize money, that's not fair. That's not fair, obviously, and their betting industry is irrelevant. If you compare it to the likes of the Far East, where like there's just infatuation with racing among the locals, and they plow so much money into their system, that's not comparable either. France is a bit comparable, because like it's a local jurisdiction. They have the Paris Mutuel, but like it wasn't much reported. French prize money, French turnover is on the decline as well. But I'm surprised in general at the lack of conversation in Ireland around the massive drop in turnover on racing in Britain, which will ultimately, almost very likely, result in racecourse closures in Ireland in the next 5 years. Like, because the racecourses, their future is based on turnover on races at that track, based on the last rights agreement with HRI and RMG. That will, if a racecourse is having a few bad years in a row, it'll be terminal. Now, there are absolutely far too many races in Ireland at the moment for me, and it helps me get work. And the more races that are on TV, it'll help my position of getting to a meeting. But take that out of it from me, and there are way too many races. There are far too many low grade horses in the country as well. I felt Dundalk this winter has been absolute overkill with those Wednesday meetings again, some of which I was reporting at. Far too many just the same horse run against each other for $6,000. So there will be a kind of a concentration, I think, of some races and some horse going out of the system. Then again, we have a second all-weather track coming, so maybe not.
Yeah.
But even the money that racecourses get from media rights, it can be fairly astronomical sums. And we've kind of spoken about it before. A lot of the time, some of the racetracks just don't seem to care about getting punters in the gates, or because they know that this media rights money can maybe support them throughout the year.
Well, on that, Emma, what are Leopardstown doing to get people? We've seen, like, it was a Declan Carroll, he's an owner, tweeting about what are Leopardstown doing to get people to go to the flat meetings, which was such a lovely experience. They have become absolutely deader than Parnell, like. And what are racecourses doing to attract people to individual meetings? Leopardstown be the obvious.
Yeah, maybe if they were obliged to contribute more of this media rights money into the prize money, they'd have to do a bit more to do so. And like, even outside of race meetings, like a race course should probably be able to support itself. Just like, even if they never had a race day, like the size of a place like Leopardstown or the Curragh, like the functions and things they could do, they shouldn't be relying on media rights money really to keep the show on the road, which kind of seems to be maybe the case at some tracks anyway, at least at the moment. So I don't know, maybe the race courses should be obliged to help contribute more to the prize money as well.
And Vinny, it's like the person paying in now is almost an irrelevance, like, because and that's becoming a problem, because the guys who ultimately pay the bills, which are the people broadcasting the races to phones and in the betting shops and online, they want the races to be as drawn out as possible. They also, quite crucially, want as much time between races on TV, so that a punter who's 10 minutes to peruse a race rather than 2 minutes for example, is far more likely to have a bet. So that's why they want to drag the life out of race meetings, these 35-minute gap flat meetings with 8 races, like, which really, really just feel like an incarceration to me. That's all being driven by the data of that drives turnover. But at the same time, that makes going to the races like a far from enjoyable experience at times. So there's lots to think about.
Yeah, the other thing you point out there is you think there's too much racing at the moment in Ireland, yet horse race in Ireland have a 5-year plan where they're due to increase it by 10%. So I don't know where we go with it all. Anyway, we'll move on to some other things from last week. Lots of things. Lots of anti-post news about the 1,000, 2,000 guineas. Aidan O'Brien had stable tour or stable visit from all the press last week, and Fairy Godmother since then has been retired due to an injury. And we also have in the guineas, the 2,000 guineas, the line in winter is a bit of a doubt, out to 33 to 1 I see on Betfair. There was also a doubt about Lake Victoria, less of a doubt for the 1,000 guineas. But all round it, it's an interesting time of the year from the anti-post markets, Johnny, isn't it, for these flat classics?
Markets are an absolute shadow of what they were, but still people still like them, and the anti-post. I love anti-post betting myself. If you can still get on and all of that. I actually found the line in winter thing a bit odd, and I blame myself a bit for this, I suppose, because I'm a nominal journalist as well. Like, why did this news only emerge when a load of journalists turned up when basically what, like, the favourite for the Derby was well behind for the Guineas, and it only emerged when there was a media press day. Like, I mean, in the middle of the late March, surely somebody could have found this out. In the meantime, I just thought that was a bit strange. I wasn't unfortunately there on the day. It's probably a sign also, just there's fewer and fewer racing journalists out there as the media gets changes and all of that. But I felt that the line in winter, I never had him down as a Guineas contender, but I really hope he rocks up in the Derby, because after kind of what we saw with Delacroix yesterday, it could be a hell of a race just looking at the Ballydoyle contenders.
Yeah, Delacroix, you mentioned that. I thought it was very interesting. Aidan's comment after the race, when the horse won the Ballysacks, he said the colt is still babyish, which I find odd, because he'd 5 runs at 2 and another 1 at 3. 6 runs, you think his babiness should be well gone by now. What do you make of that, Emma?
You'd imagine so, but I suppose, look, he's still only a 3-year-old. So I was impressed by how fast he was breaking from the stalls. So it was kind of the first thing that kind of caught you watching back the race. But he was impressive now, to be fair. And like Johnny said, it'll be a fair Derby if he kind of kicks on and the line in winter kick on from here. And you'd imagine Jessica Harrington was very happy watching it as well, because both of her two good colts beat Delacroix last year. Green Impact and Hot as Hell both got the better of him as a 2-year-old. So her classic team's looking fairly strong as well after yesterday's Ballysacks.
Yeah, of course. Aidan O'Brien, he'd 3 winners on the day, him and Ryan Moore, and Dermot Wells doing well too. That was some gamble on Dermot Wells in the first. I've never seen anything like it. They backed it as if it could not be beaten, and yet it looked beaten turning in. He was still sitting in last, Chris Hayes, but he knew what he had under him. He came home and won well. Another thing to note from the weekend there was Downpatrick, the Ulster National. I thought this was some performance from Dunboyne. Well, some training performance from me and Donoghue. You were up there, Johnny, were you?
Yeah, I don't drive, like, which I get slagged about at the races. People are like, Dave Keane even was saying to me yesterday, how the hell do you do this? Like, yesterday I didn't have my normal lift from my normal suspects to Downpatrick, so I ended up getting a train to Newry, and then getting a lift from Newry from some of the O'Hare boys and Robert, who a lot of people know from the racetrack. He was telling me, like, he was giving me kind of a pocket history of I suppose South Down and that general region, and some of it was to do with the Troubles, as you would expect. And he said up there in the right, and I'm fashioning a bad accent here, but he said, see there, that's where Dolores Price was born. And I said, that's where Dolores Price was born, thinking of, the Republican terrorist. No, Doran's Pride. so I mixed up. So I was like, that's where the ambush took place. That's where such and such. That's where Dolores Price was born. No, Doran's Pride. So I was like, all right. So Doran's Pride. But I was getting this kind of, and then you come to Downpatrick, and like, Jesus, it's in the middle of, it's basically, it's a busy road, but I've never been to Downpatrick town, but this is a rural racetrack. the place was buzzing. Like, and racetrack attendances are still small in Ireland, but it doesn't matter when there's a buzz and an absolute like lively atmosphere, great music. It was just a really nice experience to race there. Everyone was in good form. Really nice mixture as well. There was a Hunter's Chase at the end, which is a good race. You had the Ulster National, which was a 50 grand race and a nice turnout. And you had Willie Mullins having a short price favourite in the first good handicaps. But Ian Donoghue, like I have to say I got a great kick out of this because Ian beat Keith. And Ian has only emerged on the national scene with the training horses lately. But I was one of these people who tipped and backed Dunboyne when he was with Gordon Elliott. And he basically looked like he was giving up. He started pulling himself up in races after travelling well. I didn't know whether he was just getting tired in the races, which he was, or whether he was just getting tired. And also, I'm not jumping the last year, I'm done. And apparently Ian just said to the owner, I'm telling you, and he kept at him, bring him over to me. I just need to sweeten him up, and you never know what happens. And then you add in the fact that James Smith, who's, he's a £5 conditional, and it was just a kind of a local success. But that idea of taking a horse out of one of the best yards in the country, freshening him up, and then winning the race when he was headed and actually rallied to win. It was just a brilliant day's racing. And then we had the last race, Michael Sharp. I don't know how. I mean, I'm not a jockey, but like he rode the horse like he was drunk up on top of a statue at the end, because I think he'd lost one of his irons. And I don't know how he stayed on the horse. And he got up in the closing stages for a 1-2 for Sonny Carey to beat Jackie Mullins' horse that Patrick rode on the line. And it was his first winner ever at a race meeting. And then you had Niall Hennessy as well. It was just a brilliant day's racing, and a really excellent job done by Ian Donoghue on Dunboyne. And he played it down. He said, we've just freshened him up. Haven't done much, just took him out, took him hunting a bit and freshened him up. But he's turned into basically a horse who didn't want to do anything to a horse that seems to only want to please,
Yeah, very true. Anyway, we'll move on from last week and look ahead to what's coming up this week. We've got the Aintree Grand National meeting start on Thursday. Emma, we've got some cracking contests coming up over the 3 days. Constitution Hill, Lossiemouth, maybe even brighter days ahead. What do you make of that? How would you go there? 2.5 mile race.
Yeah, that's the one I'm definitely most looking forward to seeing. The National looks like a really kind of high class renewal, but this Aintree hurdle, like probably maybe one that might be a little bit forgotten about in some years. Like Constitution Hill won it a couple of years ago, but there wasn't a whole pile of competition. But 2 mile 4 here, brighter days ahead. If she can bounce back, she's a massive contender. Obviously, she was brilliant at Aintree last year, and Lossiemouth then as well. Like over her ideal trip, like she got within 2 or 3 lengths at Kempton over 2 miles against Constitution Hill. You'd imagine stepping up and trip is going to suit her even better. And it was probably one of Constitution Hill's least impressive performances, I suppose, when he won this a couple of years ago. So, God, I don't know. I'd be kind of swaying towards Lossiemouth now at this stage. She was just so impressive at Cheltenham, and good of Willie to kind of throw her hat in the ring here and take on the boys. Like he could have gone to Punchestown with her, but it'll be some showdown, and it'll be a real test, I suppose, of Constitution Hill coming back from that fall. I know Nicky said he's done loads and loads of schooling with him since, but I'm probably going to edge with Lossiemouth. I'd say over 2 mile 4 here. She could give it right up to Constitution Hill.
3 days. I must say I really enjoyed this. I think it's a very good punting 3 days as well. If you smaller fields, it's not quite as competitive numerically wise anyway as Cheltenham, so you have a better chance of maybe backing a winner. What about you, Johnny? Is it a meeting you like?
I spoke to Willie Mullins about this yesterday. I've never been to Liverpool, and I've never been to Aintree. I've been to Liverpool, but for some reason it's not. Maybe I'm getting a bit too old for it now, and the well-dressed people there wouldn't have the same effect to me as they would have when I was in my 20s, maybe. But I don't know. I found punting on Aintree. I find you can get frustrated because some of the horses at Cheltenham can absolutely just bomb out because it's an add-on race meeting that there wasn't their priority for the season. So I'm kind of always wary of backing horses who ran at Cheltenham at short odds, if that makes sense, at Aintree. The National itself, I was never a massive fan of the race for whatever reason, and now I kind of could really take it or leave it. I don't know what it is anymore, but at the same time, it's very enjoyable racing, and I love the fact that if the likes of Tom Gibney and Shark Hanlon, Ian Donoghue as well, like jockeys who wouldn't have that many big race winners, having real chances in the National. And just talking to Willie yesterday and everyone, it does seem like great crack to go over there. Liverpool's a fantastic city. But after listening to Emma last year, I'm more keen to go to Royal Ascot than Aintree at the moment.
There you go. Now, Royal Ascot. How did that get into this conversation? But anyway,
It's one on the
one I
bucket list. I haven't been to the Guineas, I haven't been to the Derby, I haven't been to Aintree, and I haven't been to Royal Ascot. And I might well go to the Derby this year, but Royal Ascot's definitely on the list.
I booked my hotel this week, so yeah, definitely. Anyone who hasn't been to Royal Ascot, get it booked.
There you go. I'm thinking of going to Benidorm for Cheltenham. Actually, there you are. Yeah, everyone to their own. Yeah. All right. Well, what else have we to talk about? We've gone through it all, I think, have we? More or less. John Bond is another one to look forward to, of course, in Aintree, and another one to watch out for is, I think anyway, is Gidley Park. That's the horse that beat Caldwell Potter the last day, and he's due to run. So it'll be interesting to see how he runs, because Caldwell Potter didn't have hack up in Cheltenham in a handicap. Harry Fry has that Gilday Park. Anyway, what about something for the weekend, or from you saw from last weekend, or anything people can follow? Emma, have you got one for us?
You kind of spoke a little bit about her, I suppose, but I thought it was a brilliant day for Dermot Weld yesterday. He had Swelter won the 1,000 guineas trial, but that winner of the maiden, the Tarima, she's a sister of Tahira and Tanawa, Boyle up the Vega, I suppose, was fitting enough. Ballydoyle sponsored the race, but kind of just like you said, she was kind of backed as if defeat was not in the question. First time out. You kind of know how well Dermot Weld does with these fillies, and I thought she looked high class. Now she quickened up well. I'd say for the flat season ahead, she's definitely one for people to put in their trackers.
Stuff, yeah, you could be right, because Chris Hayes seemed to know what he was doing. He was easing up in the finish, haven't looked in trouble for a while. What about you, Johnny? Did you spot anything?
Yeah, I do enjoy Dermot Weld doing well this time of year. You know, it just shows that we're all getting older, but some things have just remained the same, which is nice. Sorry, I'm going to preempt you here, Vinny, because we only consulted each other late on, but I am going to go with, I think, your selection, Ballysax Hank, who he went off 11-2 yesterday. How would you make any sense of that? So I guess you can imply that he needed the run a bit or whatever. Like, he was odds on 2 runs ago, 33s the last day, albeit in a good race. And I felt yesterday's race was very much there for the take, and then he went out from 6-4 to 11-2 or something like that. Whatever he was on the exchanges, but he's, considering the market drift, there was obviously some negative around him, whether it was true or not. Maybe he'll come on for the run. His jumping was spectacular, I thought, for a horse who fell previously. And now he's eligible as a novice until the Drinmore, isn't that right? But there should be a nice race in him on nice ground. I have no issue, I'd say, dropping him back in trip, but he's a gorgeous looking horse, actually, as well. I'm no judge of horses, but he's one that would take your eye.
Yeah, I liked him. I really liked the way he won. Now, of course, he's got a local connection to me, because he's named after a real character from my area, Pat Cummins, who they used to call Hank, and Liam Toker, who'd be a neighbour of his, or was a neighbour of his. Liam Toker named the horse after him when Hank died. And all the local people were back at him. I was up to the pub yesterday afternoon, and there were 5 lads who were after having 20 quid on them each at 100-30, but they got paid at 11-2. They couldn't believe their luck at the price. But if you get a chance to watch this back, anyone, he was cruising at the back of the field with Keith Donoghue riding him, and coming to the second last, he really jumped over horses. And then at the last again, he was about a length down going into it and came out a length up. So he can certainly jump, despite unseating his rider on the previous go. There's definitely a future for him. It was probably a bit of an egg and spoon race he won, but having said that, I think he is a nice horse, and he does. So there you go. Anyway, that's it from us. We're more or less done. So do subscribe if you haven't already, and certainly hit a little like on the little button down below, and we'll all be happy. And we'll see you all again next week when we'll be reviewing what happened at Aintree. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.